He told her he couldn't see. And maybe that's why she finally let her guard down. But love built on a lie never stays hidden for long. The crash came first. Glass shattering somewhere in the main hall downstairs. Then screaming. Then the unmistakable sound of claws raking across wood. Iris bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against her ribs. The silk sheets tangled around her legs as she kicked free, bare feet hitting cold floor. Another scream cut through the night, sharper this time, closer. She didn't waste time throwing on more than the oversized shirt she'd fallen asleep in. Her hand found the silver blade under her pillow by instinct, fingers wrapping tight around the hilt. The hallway outside her room stretched dark and empty. Too empty. Where were the guards? The estate should have been crawling with her father's men, but the silence between screams felt wrong, hollow, like the house itself was holding its breath. She moved fast, keeping low, blade ready. The marble stairs felt like ice under her feet as she descended, each step careful, controlled. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, anxious, wanting out, but she shoved it down. Not yet. She needed to see what she was dealing with first. The main hall was chaos. Furniture overturned, paintings ripped from walls, and blood. Not much, but enough to paint a streak across the white marble near the entrance. Two of her father's guards lay crumpled near the doorway, unconscious or worse, she couldn't tell from this distance. And standing in the center of it all, surrounded by three of her father's enforcers, was a man she'd never seen before. He wasn't fighting. That's what struck her first. The enforcers had him cornered, claws out, teeth bared, and he just stood there, hands raised, head tilted slightly like he was listening to something only he could hear. His clothes were torn, dirty, like he'd been traveling rough for days. Dark hair fell across his face, and even from here she could see the cuts on his arms. Fresh blood still wet. "I'm not here to fight," the stranger said, voice low and steady despite three wolves circling him like he was prey. "I'm just passing through. I didn't mean to." "Shut up," one of the enforcers snarled. "Garrett." She recognized his voice, all gravel and rage. "You broke into the Luna's estate. That's a death sentence." Luna. The title still felt strange, even after 6 months. She'd never wanted it. Never asked for the responsibility of leading a pack that barely trusted her. But her father's illness had left her no choice. And now every wolf in the territory watched her like she was about to crack under the weight. Maybe she was. "I didn't break in," the stranger said. And there was something in his tone that made Iris pause on the stairs. Something honest. Tired. "The gate was open. I thought." Garrett's claws slashed through the air, missing the stranger's face by inches. "I said shut up." Iris moved before she could think better of it, stepping into the light at the base of the stairs. "Enough." 4 pairs of eyes snapped to her. The enforcers immediately lowered their heads in submission, but she barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on the stranger, on the way he turned toward her voice but didn't quite look at her. His eyes were a startling pale green, almost gray in the dim light, and they stared just past her left shoulder, unfocused. Blind. The realization hit her like cold water. He was blind. "Luna Iris," Garrett started, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "What happened?" she asked, keeping her voice level, authoritative. The voice her father had taught her to use when she needed wolves to listen and obey without question. "Caught him sneaking around the east wing," Garrett said, gesturing at the stranger with one clawed hand. "Found him trying doors, looking for a way in. When we confronted him, he ran. Crashed through the window trying to escape." The stranger's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. Just stood there, bleeding, eyes fixed on nothing. Iris studied him. He didn't look dangerous. Didn't smell like a threat either, just exhausted like he'd been running for too long. But she'd learned the hard way that looks meant nothing. Trust got you hurt. Trust got you betrayed. She'd sworn after Damien that she'd never make that mistake again. "Why are you here?" she asked, directing the question at the stranger. He hesitated, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, and his voice was different now, softer, almost apologetic. I'm looking for shelter. Just for the night. I didn't realize this was packed territory. I haven't eaten in 3 days and He stopped, swayed slightly, and she saw the exhaustion written in every line of his body. I'm sorry. I'll leave. You're not going anywhere, Garrett snapped. Not until the Luna decides what to do with you. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. Iris should have told them to throw him out. Should have reinforced the borders. Made an example of what happened to wolves who trespassed on her territory. That's what a strong Luna would do. That's what her father would have done. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he stood there, vulnerable and defeated. Nothing like the aggressive males who tried to challenge her authority over the past months. Maybe it was the fact that he couldn't even see her. Couldn't judge her the way everyone else did. Couldn't look at her and see the broken girl who'd trusted the wrong man and paid for it. Or maybe she was just tired of being what everyone expected. Let him go, she said. Garrett's head snapped up. Luna, with all due respect. I said let him go. Her wolf pushed forward. Just enough to make her eyes flash gold. Enough to remind them who was in charge. He's blind and half-starved. He's not a threat. The enforcers exchanged glances but didn't argue. They knew better. Slowly, reluctantly, they stepped back, giving the stranger room to move. He didn't. Just stood there, head tilted, listening. You can leave, Iris said, softer now. But if you need food, I can have someone bring you something before you go. That got his attention. His head turned toward her voice, and for a second she could have sworn he was actually looking at her, really seeing her, before she remembered he couldn't. That's kind of you, he said slowly, like he wasn't used to kindness. Like he didn't trust it. She understood that feeling better than he knew. Garrett, take him to the kitchen, she ordered. Get him fed. Then escort him off the property. Luna. That's an order. Garrett's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Yes, Luna. Iris turned to leave, to go back upstairs and pretend this night hadn't happened. But the stranger's voice stopped her. Thank you. 2 words. Simple. Sincere. And something about them made her chest tighten in a way she hadn't felt in months. She didn't respond. Didn't trust herself to. Just climbed the stairs and disappeared into the darkness of the upper floor, leaving the stranger and his quiet gratitude behind. But she could feel his presence even after she was gone, like a pull she didn't understand and didn't want to examine too closely. By morning, she'd convinced herself she'd done the right thing. Shown mercy. Been the bigger person. The stranger would be gone, and she'd never have to think about him again. Except when she came downstairs for breakfast. He was still there, sitting at her kitchen table, eating scrambled eggs like he belonged there. What the hell? The words burst out before she could stop them. The stranger's head lifted, turning toward her voice. There was a bandage on his arm now, clean white gauze covering the cuts from last night. Someone had given him fresh clothes too, a simple black shirt and jeans that actually fit. He looked different in the morning light. Younger than she'd thought, maybe late 20s. And without the blood and dirt, she could see the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. She shoved the observation away, irritated with herself. Luna. Iris. The voice came from the doorway, and she turned to find Clara, the head housekeeper, wringing her hands nervously. I'm sorry, I should have told you. Garrett left him here last night after he ate. Said you'd decide what to do with him in the morning. But then there was that issue with the plumbing in the East Wing and I got distracted. Where's Garrett now? Iris asked, fighting to keep her voice calm. Border Patrol. Won't be back until tonight. Perfect. Just perfect. Iris turned back to the stranger, who'd stopped eating and was sitting very still, like he could sense her anger even if he couldn't see it. I told them to escort you off the property, she said. I know. He set his fork down carefully. I'm sorry. Fell asleep. I didn't mean to. You need to leave. The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't soften them. Couldn't. Now. He nodded slowly, pushing back from the table. Of course. Thank you for the food. He stood, and that's when she noticed how he moved. Carefully, deliberately, one hand trailing along the edge of the table to keep his bearings. He took a step toward what he probably thought was the door, but he was angled wrong, heading straight for the wall instead. Iris watched him, jaw tight, waiting for him to figure it out. He took another step. Another. His hand stretched out, searching for a doorframe that wasn't there. Left, she said before she could stop herself. 3 steps to your left. He froze, then turned, adjusting his path. Thank you. She didn't respond. Didn't move to help him either. Just watched as he navigated the unfamiliar space. Hands outstretched, vulnerable in a way that made something uncomfortable twist in her chest. He made it to the doorway, then paused. I really am sorry, he said quietly. For the intrusion. For the trouble. What's your name? The question slipped out before she could think better of it. He turned back toward her. And again that strange feeling of being seen even though she knew she wasn't. Cade, he said. My name is Cade. Well, Cade, I hope you find somewhere safe to go. She meant it as a dismissal, a final goodbye. But he just stood there for a moment longer, head tilted like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. So do I, he said finally, and then he was gone, disappearing into the hallway beyond. Iris stood in the kitchen for a long time after, staring at the empty doorway, trying to ignore the strange sense of loss that had settled over her like a blanket. It was better this way. Safer. She didn't need another complication in her life. Didn't need another man who'd turn out to be just like all the rest. The rest of the day passed in a blur of pack business. Disputes to settle, borders to check, endless paperwork her father used to handle that now fell to her. By the time evening rolled around, she was exhausted, ready to collapse into bed and forget this day had ever happened. She was halfway up the stairs when Clara appeared again, wringing her hands in that nervous way that meant trouble. Luna, I'm sorry to bother you, but... What now? It's about the stranger. Cade. Iris's hand tightened on the banister. What about him? He collapsed. About half a mile from the estate. One of the patrols found him unconscious on the road. The words hit her like a physical blow. Is he? He's alive. But he's in bad shape. Fever. Infection in those cuts on his arm. The pack doctor says he won't make it through the night without treatment. Iris closed her eyes, fighting the urge to scream. This wasn't her problem. He wasn't her responsibility. She'd shown him mercy, given him food, and that should have been enough. But the image of him navigating her kitchen, hands outstretched, trusting her directions, wouldn't leave her mind. Bring him back, she said, the words tasting like surrender. Put him in one of the guest rooms. Tell the doctor to do whatever needs to be done. Clara's eyes widened. Luna, are you sure? The pack elders won't like. I don't care what they like. Her wolf pushed forward, making her voice sharp. He's injured and sick. We don't turn away wolves in need. That's not who we are. That's not who I am, she thought but didn't say. Clara nodded quickly and hurried off, leaving Iris alone on the stairs. She told herself it was the right thing to do. The moral thing. That any decent Luna would make the same choice. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she knew it was more than that. There was something about Cade. Something that felt different. Safe, almost. In a way she hadn't felt around a man since before Damien destroyed her ability to trust. Maybe it was because he couldn't see her. Couldn't judge her. Couldn't look at her with that mixture of pity and disappointment she saw in everyone else's eyes. Or maybe she was just lonely. Desperate for someone who didn't expect her to be strong every second of every day. Either way, she'd made her choice. Cade was staying. At least until he healed. And if a small, traitorous part of her hoped it would take a long time, well, she'd deal with that later. 3 hours later, Iris stood outside the guest room door. Hand raised to knock, frozen. She'd told herself she was just checking on him. Making sure the doctor had done his job. But her heart was beating too fast, her palms were sweating, and she felt like a nervous teenager instead of a Luna in her own territory. Ridiculous. She knocked. Come in. His voice was rough, strained with fever, but conscious. That was good. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Cade was in bed, propped up against pillows, his injured arm wrapped in fresh bandages. His shirt was off, and she could see the sheen of sweat on his skin, the way his chest rose and fell with labored breaths. The doctor had left medicine on the nightstand, along with water and a damp cloth. His head turned toward the door as she entered, those pale green eyes staring just past her again. Luna Iris, he said, and there was surprise in his voice. I didn't expect. I wanted to make sure you were being taken care of. She kept her distance, staying near the door. The doctor says you'll recover. Thanks to you. He shifted slightly, wincing. I'm sorry. For being a burden. You're not. She stopped, took a breath. It's fine. You needed help. Most people wouldn't have given it. His voice was quiet, thoughtful. Most alphas would have killed me for trespassing. Or at least thrown me in a cell. I'm not most alphas. No, he agreed, and something in his tone made her chest tighten. You're not. Silence fell between them, heavy and charged. Iris searched for something to say, some way to fill it, but words failed her. Why did you help me? Cade asked suddenly. Really? The question caught her off guard. She could have lied, should have lied. But something about the darkness, about the way he couldn't see her face, made the truth easier. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe because you reminded me that not everyone is a threat. Or maybe I'm just tired of being the person everyone expects me to be. He was quiet for a moment, processing that. Then, what kind of person do they expect? Strong, ruthless, unforgiving. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My father's daughter. And you're not. I don't know what I am anymore. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest in a way she hadn't been with anyone in months. Years, maybe. Cade's expression softened, and for a moment she could almost believe he was seeing her, really seeing her, past all the walls she'd built. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me stay. For trusting me when you didn't have to. Trust. The word made her stomach twist. Because she wasn't sure she did trust him. Wasn't sure she could trust anyone anymore. But standing here in this quiet room, with this man who couldn't see her weaknesses or judge her failures, she felt something close to it. And that terrified her more than any threat to her territory ever could. Get some rest, she said, backing toward the door. I'll have someone bring you food in the morning. Iris. She stopped, hand on the doorknob. He'd never used her name before. Just her title. Yes. Thank you. Really? She didn't respond. Couldn't. Just slipped out of the room and closed the door behind her. Heart racing, hands shaking. This was a mistake. She knew it with every fiber of her being. But as she walked back to her own room, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not yet. By the time she finally fell asleep, rain had started to fall outside, steady and relentless, drumming against the windows like a warning she was too tired to heed. And in the guest room down the hall, Cade lay awake, staring at the ceiling with eyes that saw everything, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It pounded against the estate like it had a personal vendetta, turning the grounds into a muddy mess and trapping everyone indoors. Iris told herself that's why she kept finding excuses to check on Cade. The weather made it impossible for him to leave safely. It was practical, responsible. It had nothing to do with the way her pulse quickened every time she heard his voice. You don't have to keep doing this, you know. Iris looked up from the tray she'd just set on the bedside table. Fresh bandages, medicine, soup that Clara had made with enough salt to actually taste like something. Cade was sitting up in bed now, color back in his face, the fever finally broken. He looked better, stronger. He still wasn't looking directly at her. Doing what? She asked, arranging the items with more care than necessary. Bringing me things yourself. I'm sure you have staff for that. I do. Then why? Good question. She'd been asking herself the same thing for the past 72 hours. Maybe I like the walk, she said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near defensive. His lips curved into a small smile. From your room to here. That's what, 30 steps? 42, actually. The smile widened. You counted. Damn it. I know my own house. I'm sure you do. He shifted, and she caught the wince he tried to hide. Still hurting then. Thank you for the soup. And for everything else. You've been more than generous. Generous. The word sat wrong in her chest. She wasn't being generous. She was being stupid. Letting a strange wolf stay in her home, bringing him meals like some kind of delusional caretaker. All because he had nice eyes he couldn't even use and a voice that made her feel less alone. Pathetic. The rain should clear tomorrow, she said, keeping her tone neutral. Professional. You'll be able to leave then. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment. No, she was imagining it. Right, he said quietly. Of course. The silence that followed felt heavy. Iris searched for something else to say. But her mind came up empty. This was good. Better. He'd leave, she'd go back to her life. And she'd forget all about the blind wolf who'd crashed into her world and made her feel things she'd sworn she was done feeling. She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. Can I ask you something? She should have said no. Should have kept walking. What? Why are you so afraid? Question hit like a slap. She spun around, anger flashing hot and immediate. Excuse me. He held up his hands, placating. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend. It's just, you tense up every time you come in here. Your heartbeat spikes when I speak. And the way you position yourself near the door, like you're ready to run. He paused. Someone hurt you. Badly. Iris's hands clenched into fists. You don't know anything about me. I know you're kind even when you're trying not to be. I know you second-guess every decision you make. And I know you're terrified that letting anyone close will destroy you all over again. The accuracy of it stole her breath. She wanted to yell at him, to throw him out right now, rain be damned. But the anger wouldn't come. Just a hollow ache that made her feel stripped bare. How? Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. How can you possibly know that? Because I listen. He said it simply, like it was obvious. And because I understand what it's like to be broken by someone you trusted. The admission hung between them, fragile and raw. Iris found herself moving closer without meaning to. Drawn by the pain she heard echoing her own. What happened to you? She asked quietly. Cade's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my pack. My family. They. He stopped, breathed out slowly. I trusted them. Believed in them. And they cast me out the moment I became a liability. Because you're blind. Among other things. Bitterness leaked into his voice. Turns out loyalty only matters when you're useful. Iris sat down on the edge of the bed without thinking about it. The mattress dipping under her weight. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned an important lesson. Trust is a luxury people like us can't afford. People like us. The words resonated somewhere deep. She'd been so focused on her own pain, her own betrayal, that she hadn't considered Cade might be carrying similar scars. His name was Damien, she heard herself say. The words spilled out before she could stop them, like lancing a wound. He was my father's second. Strong, charming, everything an alpha should be. He said he loved me. Said he'd stand by me when I took over as Luna. She laughed, but it sounded broken even to her own ears. Turns out he was sleeping with my cousin. Had been for months. The whole pack knew. Everyone except me. Cade's expression darkened. That's humiliating. Devastating. Pick your adjective. She wrapped her arms around herself. The worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was realizing how stupid I'd been. How blind. She caught the irony of the word too late, but Cade didn't react. You weren't stupid, he said firmly. You were human. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not a weakness, Iris. That's just proof you have a heart. A heart that got me made into a joke. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Do you know what they call me behind my back? Foolish Luna. The one who couldn't even see betrayal when it was sleeping in her own bed. Then they're idiots. His voice was sharp now, protective in a way that made her chest tighten. Anyone who judges you for someone else's cruelty isn't worth your time. Easy to say when you're not the one living it. You think I don't know what it's like to be judged? He leaned forward, and the movement brought him closer. Close enough that she could see flecks of gold in those pale green eyes. I've been called useless, broken, a burden. I've had wolves I considered family look through me like I was already dead. So yeah, Iris, I know exactly what it's like to be diminished by people who should have valued you. The pain in his voice was real, tangible. Without thinking, Iris reached out and took his hand. The contact sent electricity up her arm, but she didn't pull away. I'm sorry, she said again, meaning it more this time. For what they did to you. For what you've had to endure. His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. And I'm sorry for what he did to you. For making you afraid to trust. You deserve better than that. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. When was the last time someone had said something like that to her? When was the last time anyone had looked past her title and her responsibilities and seen her? Except he wasn't looking. Couldn't look. Maybe that's why this felt safe. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that for a long moment, hands intertwined, rain drumming steadily outside. Iris knew she should pull away, should re-establish boundaries, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But for the first time in months she felt seen. Understood. And she couldn't bring herself to let that go. Tell me about your pack, Cade said softly. What it's like being Luna. So she did. She told him about the pressure, the expectations, the constant feeling that she was one mistake away from losing everything. She told him about her father's illness, how it had forced her into a role she never wanted. She told him things she hadn't told anyone. Secrets and fears and doubts that she'd kept locked away because a Luna wasn't supposed to be uncertain. And he listened, really listened, asked questions that showed he cared about the answers, made observations that proved he was paying attention to every word. By the time she finished, the soup had gone cold and the rain had softened to a gentle patter. You're stronger than you think, Cade said. Everything you just described, that's not someone who's broken. That's someone who's surviving. There's a difference. It doesn't feel like survival. It feels like drowning. Then maybe you need someone to help keep your head above water. The offer was implicit, gentle, and completely terrifying. I can't. She pulled her hand away, stood up. Too fast. Too obvious. I should go. Let you rest. Iris. The rain should be clear tomorrow, she said, backing toward the door. You can leave then. I'll make sure you have supplies for the road. Iris, wait. But she was already gone. Door closing behind her, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd said too much. Revealed too much. Let him get too close. This was why she didn't trust. This was why she kept everyone at arm's length. Because the moment you let someone in, the moment you showed them your weaknesses, they had the power to destroy you. And she couldn't survive being destroyed again. The next morning brought clear skies and a decision Iris had made somewhere around 3 a.m. when sleep refused to come. Cade had to leave. Today. Before whatever this was between them became something she couldn't walk away from. She found him in the kitchen. He was making coffee. Actually making it. Hands moving confidently over the machine. Measuring grounds by touch. Pouring water without spilling a drop. Clara stood in the corner watching nervously, clearly uncertain whether to help or interfere. You didn't tell me you could do that, Iris said from the doorway. Cade turned toward her voice, a slight smile on his face. You didn't ask. Besides, being blind doesn't mean being helpless. I've been managing on my own for years. The casual competence shouldn't have been attractive. definitely shouldn't have made her stomach flutter. The rain stopped, she said, forcing herself to sound neutral. I had Garrett pack supplies for you. Food, money, clothes that actually fit. It should be enough to get you wherever you're going. The smile faded. Right, of course. He set down the coffee pot carefully, turned off the machine. Everything about his movements was precise, controlled. How had she not noticed before how smoothly he navigated the world? How little he actually needed help. I can't thank you enough, he said. For everything. You saved my life. You would have been fine. No. His voice was firm. I wouldn't have. I was dying when your patrol found me. The infection, the fever, without treatment, I had maybe hours left. He paused. You gave me a second chance when you had every reason not to. That's not something I'll forget. The gratitude in his voice made her chest ache. She wanted to tell him to stay. Wanted to take back everything she'd said about him leaving. But fear wrapped around her throat, choking back the words. Well, she managed. Good luck out there. He nodded slowly. And was it her imagination, or did he look disappointed? Goodbye, Iris. I hope you find someone worthy of that heart you're so afraid to show. The words hit like a gut punch. Before she could respond, he was moving past her, one hand trailing along the wall, heading toward the front door where Garrett waited with the promised supplies. This was what she wanted, what she'd decided. So why did it feel like losing something precious? She stood frozen in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps fade, listening to the sound of the front door opening and closing, listening to the terrible silence that followed. Luna. Clara's voice was hesitant. Are you all right? I'm fine, Iris lied. She wasn't fine. She was furious. At herself for letting him get close. At him for making her care. At the universe for sending her someone who felt safe right when she'd finally accepted that safe didn't exist. The anger carried her through the morning. Through pack meetings and border reports and all the tedious responsibilities that filled her days. But by afternoon it had faded into something worse. Regret. She was in her office reviewing territory maps when Garrett knocked. Come in. He entered looking uncomfortable. Never a good sign. What is it? She asked. It's about the blind wolf. Cade. Her hand stilled on the map. What about him? He didn't leave. Her heart lurched. What? Found him about a mile from the estate. Sitting under a tree. Garrett's expression was disapproving. Said he was just resting, but he's been there for hours. I told him to move along, but... Iris was out of her chair before he finished. Show me. Garrett led her through the woods, following a path that skirted the eastern border. And there, exactly where Garrett had said, was Cade. He was sitting with his back against an oak tree, face tilted up toward the sun filtering through the branches. He looked peaceful, content, like he had nowhere else to be. Leave us, Iris told Garrett. Luna, I don't think. That wasn't a request. Garrett hesitated, then nodded and disappeared back through the trees. Iris approached slowly, leaves crunching under her feet. Cade's head turned at the sound. Iris, he said, no surprise in his voice, like he'd been expecting her. Why are you still here? Because I can't leave. The simple honesty of it made her breath catch. What? He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his jeans. I tried. Got about half a mile down the road and realized I was making a mistake. So I came back. Well, not all the way back. I figured camping on your actual property might be pushing it. I don't understand. Don't you? He took a step toward her, and another, moving with that same eerie accuracy that should have seemed impossible for someone blind. You told me to leave. Your head wants me gone. But your heart... He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. Your heart knows the same thing mine does. And what's that? Her voice came out breathless. That this, whatever this is between us, it matters. It's real. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek, gentle as a whisper. I haven't felt this connected to someone in years. Maybe ever. And I think you feel it too. She should have denied it. Should have stepped back. Should have done anything except what she did, which was lean into his touch like she was starving for it. This is insane, she whispered. I don't even know you. Then let me stay. Let us figure out what this is. I can't, her voice broke. I can't go through that again. The betrayal. Pain. I can't. Then don't. His thumb traced along her jaw, so tender it made her ache. Don't give me everything. Don't trust me completely. Just give me a chance. Let me prove I'm not him. She wanted to. God, she wanted to so badly it hurt. But fear was a vice around her chest, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. What if you're lying? Question came out small, broken. What if this is just? What if you're not who you seem? His expression shifted, something flickering across his face too fast to read. Then it was gone, replaced by gentle certainty. I'm exactly who I seem. A broken wolf looking for somewhere to belong. Someone to belong with. He leaned closer, forehead almost touching hers. Give me 2 weeks. Let me stay, help around the estate, prove I'm worth the risk. And if after 2 weeks you still want me gone, I'll leave. No arguments, no guilt. I promise. 2 weeks, 14 days. It didn't sound like much. But Iris knew better. 2 weeks was enough time to fall. Enough time to forget all the lessons Damien had taught her about trust. Enough time to get her heart broken all over again. But as she stood there, Cade's hand warm against her skin, his presence solid and real and making her feel alive in a way she'd forgotten, she found herself nodding. 2 weeks, she said. But you sleep in the guest house, not the main residence. And you pull your weight. I'm not running a charity. A smile spread across his face, bright and genuine. Deal. And no more. She gestured vaguely at the space between them. This. Whatever this is. We keep things professional. The smile turned knowing. If that's what you want. It wasn't. But it was safer. That's what I want, she lied. He stepped back, breaking contact, and the loss of his touch felt physical. Then professional it is. When do I start? Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. sharp. I'll be there. He turned to follow her back toward the estate, and that's when she saw it. Just for a second, just a flash. His eyes tracked to the left, following a bird that had launched from a nearby branch. Following it with perfect accuracy. Following it like he could see it. Iris's heart stopped. She blinked, looked again, but his gaze was unfocused once more, staring at nothing. She'd imagined it. Must have. Stress and lack of sleep making her see things that weren't there. Still, unease prickled down her spine as she led him back through the woods. She was making a mistake. She knew it with bone-deep certainty. But whether the mistake was letting him stay or doubting what she'd seen, she couldn't say. That night, lying in bed listening to the sounds of the estate settling, Iris couldn't shake the image of Cade's eyes tracking that bird. Couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. But when morning came and she saw him waiting by the guest house, exactly at 6 a.m. like he'd promised, hands in pockets and face tilted toward her approach, the doubt faded. She was being paranoid. Seeing threats where none existed because Damien had taught her to question everything. This was different. Cade was different. She had to believe that. Because the alternative, that she was being played again, that she'd let another liar into her life, would break something in her that couldn't be fixed. Ready to work? She asked, keeping her voice light. He smiled. Lead the way, Luna. And as they walked toward the main house together, neither of them noticed Garrett watching from an upper window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end. Neither of them saw the way his expression hardened when he looked at Cade. And neither of them knew that in exactly 13 days, everything Iris feared would come true. But worse. So much worse than she could possibly imagine. Cade fit into the rhythm of the estate like he'd always belonged there. That should have been Iris's first warning. By the end of the first week, He'd mapped every room, every hallway, every corner of the property with uncanny precision. He helped Clara in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a knife that moved too confidently in his hands. He organized the library by touch, fingers skimming over book spines like he was reading Braille that didn't exist. He even sat in on pack meetings, silent and observant in the corner, head tilted in that listening way of his. And he never once looked directly at anything. Iris watched him constantly, searching for another slip, another moment like the bird in the woods. But if Cade was faking his blindness, he was the best actor she'd ever seen. He stumbled occasionally, asked for help when he genuinely needed it, moved with the careful deliberation of someone navigating a world they couldn't see. So why couldn't she shake the feeling that something was wrong? "You're staring again." Iris jumped, heat flooding her cheeks. They were in the garden, Cade pulling weeds from the herb beds while she pretended to review supply reports. She'd thought he couldn't tell where her attention was focused. Apparently she was wrong. "I wasn't staring," she lied. "Your breathing changes when you look at me. Gets shallower." He sat back on his heels, wiping dirt from his hands. "It's all right. I don't mind." The casual observation made her pulse quicken. How many other things had he noticed about her? How many unconscious tells did she have that she didn't even know about? "You're very perceptive," she said carefully. "I have to be. When you can't see, you learn to read people other ways. Heartbeat, breathing, the small sounds someone makes when they're uncomfortable or happy or lying." He paused. "You do that thing with your jaw when you're stressed. Clench it just slightly on the right side." Iris's hand flew to her jaw before she could stop herself. She was doing it right now. Cade's lips curved into a small smile. "See? Right there. That's..." She didn't know if she was impressed or unnerved. "That's actually a little disturbing. Sorry. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. It's just habit now, paying attention to details like that." He went back to weeding, and Iris tried to focus on her reports. But the words blurred together, her mind stuck on what he'd said. He read people through sounds, through patterns, through all the tiny unconscious things they did. Which meant he probably knew exactly how much he affected her. The thought should have been mortifying. Instead, it felt strangely intimate, like he was seeing parts of her she usually kept hidden. Parts she'd been hiding since Damien made her feel stupid for being vulnerable. "Can I ask you something?" Iris said before she could think better of it. "Always. That connection you mentioned. The one you said was real." She kept her eyes on the report, unable to look at him while asking, "Do you still feel it?" The silence stretched long enough that she regretted the question. "Every moment I'm near you." His voice was quiet, honest. "It's like, you know how some people talk about finding their home? Not a place but a person. That's what being around you feels like. Like I've been wandering forever and finally found where I'm supposed to be." The words landed in her chest, heavy and warm and terrifying. "That's..." She swallowed hard. "That's a lot. Too much." "Absolutely yes." But what came out was, "I don't know. That's fair." He pulled another weed, movement steady and sure. "For what it's worth, I'm not expecting anything from you, Iris. I'm not Damien. I'm not here to take or manipulate or hurt. I'm just here. And if all you ever want from me is friendship, that's enough." But it wasn't enough. That was the problem. Somewhere over the past week, she'd started wanting more. Started imagining what it might be like to let him closer. Started wondering if maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. Dangerous thoughts. Stupid thoughts. "I should get back inside," she said, standing abruptly. "Pack business." If he was disappointed, he didn't show it. "Of course. I'll finish up here." She was halfway to the house when his voice stopped her. "Iris." He turned. He was still kneeling in the dirt, face angled toward where she'd been sitting, not where she was now. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me this chance. I know it wasn't easy." It wasn't. It still wasn't. Every day was a battle between what she wanted and what she feared. Just don't make me regret it, she said softly. Something flickered across his expression, there and gone too fast to interpret. I won't. I promise. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But promises were easy to make and easier to break. She'd learned that the hard way. That evening, Iris found herself in her father's study. He was asleep in his chair by the window, afternoon light painting his gaunt face in shades of gold. The sickness was eating him from the inside out, stealing more of him every day. Soon there'd be nothing left but memories and regrets. She should wake him, should update him on pack business, ask his advice about the territorial dispute brewing with the Northern Pack. But she couldn't bring herself to disturb his rest. He got so little of it these days. Instead, she sank into the chair across from him and just watched him breathe, wondering if he'd be proud of the Luna she was becoming, wondering if he'd approve of Cade, wondering if she was slowly losing her mind. You're troubled. Iris's head snapped up. Her father's eyes were open, pale and watery but still sharp, still seeing too much. I didn't mean to wake you, she said. You didn't. The pain did. He shifted, wincing. Tell me what's bothering you. Where did she even start? The blind wolf living in her guest house. The feelings she was developing despite every instinct screaming at her to run. The nagging sense that something about this whole situation was wrong. There's a wolf, she said finally. Cade. He showed up last week, injured and blind. I let him stay. Her father's eyebrows rose. And the pack elders approved this. They don't know yet. Iris. I know it's not protocol. But he needed help and... She stopped, unsure how to explain. There's something about him. Something different. Different how? He makes me feel safe. Like I can breathe around him. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Which is insane, right? Barely know him. He could be anyone. Could be lying about everything. But you don't think he is? No. I don't know. She pressed her hands to her face. That's the problem. My head says be careful, but my heart says trust him. And after Damien, I don't know which one to listen to anymore. Her father was quiet for a long moment. Then, what does your wolf say? The question caught her off guard. She'd been so focused on her human thoughts and fears that she'd stopped listening to the instincts that had guided her all her life. She closed her eyes, reaching inward, asking the question of the other half of her soul. Her wolf's response was immediate, clear, certain. Iris's eyes flew open, heart pounding. No, that's not, he can't be. Your wolf knows, her father said gently, whether you're ready to accept it or not. But I don't feel it. The pull, the bond, it's not. She stopped. That was a lie. She did feel it. Had been feeling it since the moment Cade stumbled into her life. She'd just been too afraid to name it. The mate bond doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and lightning, her father said. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle. A feeling of rightness that grows over time until one day you realize you can't imagine your life without them. What if I'm wrong? What if this is just? What if I'm confusing loneliness for connection? Then you'll figure it out. Together. He reached out, taking her hand in his frail one. Iris, I know Damien hurt you. I know he made you doubt yourself. But you can't let one bad experience close you off to something real. How do I know it's real? You don't. Not for certain. That's what trust is. A leap of faith. He squeezed her hand. But I'll tell you what I see. I see a daughter who's been drowning under the weight of responsibility, who's been alone and afraid and trying to be strong for everyone else. And if this wolf, this Cade, makes you feel less alone, that's not something to run from. That's something to fight for. Tears pricked her eyes. I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. But being scared doesn't mean being weak. It means you're brave enough to care about something that matters. She let herself cry then, quietly, while her father held her hand and the sun set outside the window. When she finally composed herself, he was smiling. Introduce me to him, he said. Tomorrow. I want to meet the wolf who's captured my daughter's heart. Dad. Tomorrow, Iris. That's an order from your alpha. She wanted to argue, wanted to say it was too soon, too complicated, too everything. But the look in his eyes told her this was important. Maybe one of the last important things he'd ask of her. Okay, she whispered. Tomorrow. That night, Iris couldn't sleep. She kept replaying her father's words, kept feeling the phantom weight of that single word her wolf had offered. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like permission, like maybe it was okay to want this, okay to take the risk. She was still awake at midnight when she heard the sound, rhythmic, coming from outside. She crossed to her window and looked down into the garden. The moon was full, painting everything in silver, and there in the middle of the courtyard was Cade. He was training, fighting an invisible opponent with moves that were too smooth, too practiced, too perfect for someone who couldn't see what they were doing. He spun, ducked, struck out with fists and feet in combinations that would have required sight to execute properly. Unless he wasn't actually blind. Iris's blood ran cold. She pressed closer to the window, watching as he moved through the forms. His eyes were open, reflecting moonlight, and they tracked his movements with perfect precision. He could see. He'd always been able to see. The realization hit like a physical blow. Everything he'd said, everything he'd done. The vulnerability, the connection, the promises that he wasn't Damien. All eyes. She watched him for another minute, each perfect movement driving the knife deeper. Then she turned away from the window, mind racing. She should confront him. Should call the guards, have him thrown out or worse. He'd infiltrated her home under false pretenses, gained her trust through deception. That was grounds for execution in any pack. But something held her back. Some part of her that still wanted to believe there was an explanation. That maybe she'd misunderstood what she was seeing. The same part that had made excuses for Damien until the evidence was impossible to ignore. Well, not this time. This time she wouldn't be the fool. Tomorrow she'd confront him. Tomorrow she'd get the truth. And if he was lying about being blind, what else had he lied about? The connection, the feelings, the promise that he wouldn't hurt her. All of it, probably all of it was fake. Iris climbed back into bed and stared at the ceiling until dawn, feeling something inside her crack and crumble like old stone. She'd been right to be afraid, right to keep her walls up, because the moment she'd started to lower them, the moment she'd started to trust, reality came crashing back in to remind her why she'd built them in the first place. Some lessons, it seemed, had to be learned twice. Morning came gray and cold. Iris dressed mechanically, each movement automatic, her mind a careful blank. She couldn't think about what she'd seen, couldn't let herself feel anything yet. She needed to be the Luna now. Strong, unbreakable, ice where her heart used to be. She found Cade in the kitchen having breakfast with Clara. He was smiling at something the older woman said, and the sight of that smile, so warm, so genuine, so fake, made rage burn hot in her chest. "Clara, leave us," Iris said. Her tone must have been sharp because Clara's eyes widened. She glanced between them, then hurried out without a word. Cade's head turned toward Iris, expression shifting to concern. "Is something wrong? You tell me." She kept her voice level, controlled. "Is there anything you'd like to confess?" His brow furrowed. "I don't understand." "No. Let me help you then." She moved closer, watching his eyes carefully. They didn't track her movement. "I saw you last night. In the courtyard. Training." Something flickered across his face. Fear. Guilt. It was there and gone too fast to be sure. "I often train at night," he said carefully. "The cool air helps me focus. Does it help you see, too?" The words hung in the air between them, sharp and accusing. Cade went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." The word came out harsh. "Don't insult me by continuing to lie." "Saw you, Cade. Saw the way you moved. The way your eyes tracked what you were doing. You're not blind. You never were." He opened his mouth. closed it. And in that moment of hesitation, Iris had her answer. "Get out," she said quietly. "Iris, please let me explain. Get out." The words tore from her throat, half human, half wolf. Her eyes flashed gold, power radiating from her in waves. "Get out of my house. Get out of my territory. Get out of my life. I can explain everything, I swear. I don't want your explanations. I don't want your lies." She was shaking now, fury and hurt warring inside her. "You came here under false pretenses. You manipulated me. Made me think." Her voice cracked. "Made me think you were different. That I could trust you. You can trust me." He stood, reaching for her, and she recoiled like he'd tried to hit her. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." Pain flashed across his face, raw and real. But she couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe anything about him anymore. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "But you did. You did exactly what Damien did. Lied to my face while making me think I was crazy for doubting." She laughed, but it came out broken. "The worst part. I was starting to believe you. Starting to think maybe I could." She shook her head. "Doesn't matter now. It matters. God, Iris, it matters more than anything." He took a step closer, and she pulled the silver blade she kept strapped to her thigh. "One more step and I'll make sure you regret it." He froze. His eyes, those lying, seeing eyes, were bright with something that looked like tears. "I'm not Damien," he said, voice breaking. "What we have, what we've built, it's real. I swear to you it's real. We have nothing. We built nothing. It was all based on a lie." She gestured toward the door with the blade. "You have 1 hour to gather your things and leave. After that, my guards have orders to kill you on sight." "Iris, that's Luna to you." She straightened, pulling on the mantle of authority like armor. "And this conversation is over. Guards." Garrett appeared in the doorway within seconds. Had he been listening? Probably. He'd never trusted Cade. Turned out he'd been right. "Escort him to the guest house," Iris ordered. "Let him collect his belongings. Then get him off my property." "Yes, Luna." Garrett's expression was grim satisfaction. "With pleasure." Cade looked at her one more time, and the anguish in his face almost broke her resolve. "Almost." "I'll go," he said quietly. "But Iris, this isn't what you think. I never wanted." He stopped. "I'm sorry. For everything." Then Garrett had him by the arm, dragging him toward the door. Cade didn't resist, didn't fight, just let himself be led away like a criminal, which is what he was. Liar. A manipulator. Another in a long line of men who'd taken advantage of her trusting heart. The moment they were gone, Iris's legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair, blade clattering to the floor, and finally let herself feel it. The betrayal, the hurt, the devastating realization that she'd been played again. She'd been so careful, so guarded, and still he'd gotten through. Still he'd made her care, made her hope. The sobs came hard and violent, tearing from her chest like something alive. She pressed her hands over her mouth, trying to muffle the sounds, trying to maintain some shred of dignity even though there was no one left to see her break. How could she have been so stupid? How could she have let this happen again? Her wolf howled inside her, confused and hurt. She'd believed what Iris's father said, had been certain Cade was their mate. But mates didn't lie. Mates didn't deceive. Whatever Cade was, he wasn't that. Couldn't be that. Iris cried until she had nothing left. Until she was empty and numb and hollowed out. Then she picked herself up, retrieved her blade, and went to find her father. He needed to know. Needed to understand that his daughter hadn't found her mate. She just found another monster wearing a kind face. She found him in his study, staring out the window. He turned when she entered, and his expression crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart," he said. "What happened?" So she told him. Everything. The training she'd witnessed, the confrontation, the lies. By the time she finished, she felt hollowed out.
Me.
Her father was quiet for a long time. Then, "Are you certain he was faking?" "I saw him, Dad." His eyes tracked his movements perfectly. He wasn't fighting blind. He was. She stopped. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because something doesn't add up." He leaned forward, wincing at the movement. If he's been faking blindness this whole time, why would he train where you could see him? Why not wait until he was off the property? Iris opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. He was right. That didn't make sense. "Maybe he didn't think anyone would be watching," she said, but it sounded weak even to her ears. "Or maybe," her father said carefully, "there's more to this than you realize." "You think I should have let him explain?" It wasn't a question. "I think jumping to conclusions is how misunderstandings happen." He held up a hand when she started to protest. "I'm not saying trust him blindly. But maybe before you throw him out permanently, hear what he has to say. If he's truly guilty, you can still banish him. But if there's an explanation..." "There's no explanation that justifies lying about something like that." "Perhaps not. But don't you want to know why? Don't you deserve to understand what actually happened here?" She did. God help her, she did. Because as much as she wanted to hate him, as much as she wanted to believe he was just another Damien, some part of her still hoped there was more to the story. That same stupid, trusting part that kept getting her hurt. "Fine," she said. "I'll talk to him. One conversation. That's all he gets." Her father smiled sadly. "That's all I'm asking." But as Iris left the study and made her way toward the guest house, dread pooled heavy in her stomach. Because deep down she knew the truth. Knew that whatever explanation Cade offered, it wouldn't be enough to fix what he'd broken. Some betrayals, some lies, cut too deep to heal. And she'd already bled enough for men who didn't deserve her pain. She was halfway to the guest house when she saw Garrett running toward her, face pale. "Luna," he gasped. "He's gone." Her heart stopped. "What?" "Cade." I turned my back for 1 second to grab his pack, and when I looked again he'd disappeared. Vanished like he was never there. Garrett's expression was grim. "I've got patrols searching, but he didn't want to be found," Iris finished quietly. Course he ran. What else would he do? Stay and face the consequences of his deception? Well, running was easier, safer. Just like Damien had run to her cousin instead of facing what he'd done. Men always ran when you finally saw them clearly. "Call off the search," she said, voice empty. "If he wants to go, let him. He's not worth the effort. Luna, he could be dangerous. He infiltrated your home under false pretenses. We don't even know why." I said call it off. Her wolf pushed forward, making her eyes flash. "That's an order." Garrett bowed his head. "Yes, Luna." He left, and Iris stood alone in the courtyard where she'd seen Cade training, where she'd watched her hope crumble into dust. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Storm was coming. She tilted her face up to the darkening sky and let the first drops of rain wash away her tears, washing away any trace that she'd been foolish enough to care. By the time she walked back inside, she was soaked through and shivering. But she barely felt it. She barely felt anything at all. And maybe she thought that was better, safer. The way it should have been all along.